Okay, good evening, council. Okay, good evening, council. Welcome to the regular session of the Town Council of Town of Sunnyvale for Monday, February 14th. Now, time is 6:30 p.m. We have all council members present and we have quorum. Council, can I have a motion to adjourn into executive session on two items? Item number one, section 551.087 economic development to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect, project DC1 and DC2, and also to consult with the town attorney for section 551.071. Regarding agenda item number 7. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Mr. Clark to adjourn the executive session. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Now time is 6:31 and we are in executive session. Good afternoon, council and members of the audience. Now time is 6:55. We are back in open session at this time. Council, there are three topics, I should say two topics. Can I have a motion with respect to resolution number 2022-06?
Mayor, make a motion to approve resolution 2022-06.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman, second by Mr. Egan to approve resolution number 2022-06 as presented. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0.
And Mayor, for members of the audience and those watching, that pertains to executive session item number 1.
So that is the, thank you, Ms. Brenda, and there is no action with respect to project number DC2. And the second item on the agenda was consultation with the attorney. I can confirm that as a result of the consultation, there are no actions to be taken. With that, now time is 6:56. I'm going to take a recess and we'll convene back at 7 o'clock and start our regular session. Okay, good evening, council and members of the audience. Let me welcome everyone to the regular town council meeting for Monday, February 4th, 14th. Please join me in standing for the invocation. Invocation to be given by Mr. Finch. Sorry.
Father, we thank you so much for your many blessings. We thank you for the town, staff, public servants who give so much to us as residents. Pray that you give us wisdom tonight as we consider the items on the agenda, decisions that all our residents. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in standing for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I forgot to announce that we are back in session at 7 p.m. All right. First item is announcements and acknowledgement. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, council or staff may make announcements. Council, do you have any announcements to make at this time? Staff, do you have any announcements? Okay, I'm going to close the announcement. Moving on to the public comments. This is the time members of the audience may come forward and speak to the council on items other than legal or personal matters. If you're joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. If you are present in the chamber, you may come forward. Eric, anyone raise their hand?
Yes, sir.
No hands raised. No one is coming forward to speak to the council. So we're going to close the public comments. Moving on to our next item, that's introduction of new employees. Justin Vanderveer, firefighter, paramedic. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are y'all? Here tonight to introduce more family members to the fire department. Justin Vanderveer. He brought his wife and his two lovely daughters. So we know who's the boss in that family. Yeah, absolutely. So Justin came to us as a paramedic and he's working on his fire stuff now. He's been a paramedic for since 7 years as a paramedic. He's worked with CareFlight and he's also had just recently worked with UT Health, which is the East Texas Medical Center ambulance service in Service, East Texas. So he was over there, and then he's finally seen the light. So he wants to be in the fire service. So he has come up like some of us have in the fire service as a volunteer as well. So he knows all the dedications and sacrifices that. So as far as tonight, I'd like to introduce to y'all as Justin Vanderveer. Whatever. I just worked this.
Smoke alarm. he gets in trouble.
Next item is recognition of the Finance Department for receiving the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financing Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for the 4th consecutive year. Let me read the news release. That's the Government Finance Officers Association news release. Government Finance Officers Association of the United States of Canada, GFOA, has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to Town of Sunnyvale for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2020. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. So I'm going to invite the Finance Department to come forward.
Even the fire department's gonna
Welcome
find
back.
us.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Crushing it. You just can't escape
See you
us.
again. She can miss us. You miss us. She
I
can.
did.
She can act like she doesn't like us, but she has to come back to us.
Yeah.
No, I did miss y'all.
Yeah, white leopard. Yeah, I guess you're gonna circle forward.
Okay, council, moving on to consent agenda items. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. Item number 5 and 6. Would anyone like to remove either of the items from the consent agenda? Okay, if not, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 5 and 6?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 5 and 6.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Eldridge, second by Mr. Freeman to approve consent agenda items 5 and 6. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Moving on to the public hearing portion of the item. Council, I just want to let you know ahead of time, we are going to pull item number 11 from discussion tonight. We'll bring that back in the next council. Okay, moving on to item number 7, hold a public hearing and consider action on a request for a residential replat of 5 lots totaling approximately 17.363 acres at the southwest corner of Collins Road and Town East Boulevard, addressed at or about 341 to 349 Collins Road and 366 to 370 Town East Boulevard to create a sixth lot with a subdivision waiver for a flag lot. Mr. Goff?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This replat concerns 5 lots at the southwest corner of Collins Road and Town East Boulevard. All of the residential lots are zoned single-family 1 and total a little over 17 acres. The council may recall that these properties received plat approval early last year for some minor property line adjustments between all these properties, which are owned by members of the same family. The owners are now requesting a replat again, and as part of that replat, lots 1, 2, and 5 are unchanged. There's a minor change to the rear property line of lot 3, and then lot 4 is being subdivided to create a new lot being called lot 6. Lot 4 becomes kind of an oddly shaped S kind of property, about 6 acres that wraps around the newly created lot 6, leaving a very small buildable area for any future home on lot 4. Lot 4 currently does not meet the dimensional standards, the width of the property at the right of way, and by carving out lot 6, that takes lot 4 further out of compliance. Lot 6 creates a new lot around the existing home on the property and is scaled to meet the 2-acre minimum requirement for properties within the zoning district. The property has access to Collins Road via a 24-foot wide driveway in between lots 3 and 4. And that is what creates the flag lot. You have the kind of the skinny driveway that reaches out to the street before it opens up into the larger property behind lot 4. Section 2.05.07 D1 of the UDO prohibits flag lots. And so the applicant is requesting a subdivision waiver to allow the flag lot and then to approve the replat request with the flag lot configuration. Staff's recommendation is based on the instructions in the UDO regarding when subdivision waivers should be granted. In this case, when staff looks at what the UDO says and the details of this proposal, there are no physical conditions that would deprive the owner of the use of the land in its current state, and there are no financial hardships present. Therefore, staff believes the UDO instructs us to deny the request. The case was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission in January, and they recommend denial of the waiver request and of the replat. And because this is a residential replat, state law requires that it be you have a public hearing. Most plats can be approved without a public hearing, but residential replats do require it, which is why it's listed as a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Let me open up for public comments. If then anyone from the members of the audience would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 7, you may do so at this time. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Erica, anyone raising their hand?
No, sir.
No hands raised, so I'm going to close the public comments. Council, do you have any comments, discussions, or questions for staff on item number 7? Okay, if there are no comments or questions, can I have a motion with respect to item number 7?
I'd like to make a motion to deny the request of waiver for the replat due to section 2.05.07, which does prohibit the use of flag lots in our UDO.
So just let me be clear, that's a motion to deny the
To deny the replat, yes, ma'am.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Freeman to deny the replat. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Finch. Everyone heard the motion? Are there any discussions? If none, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion failed.
No, the motion passed.
That's right. Thank you for the clarification. That's very helpful. Second. Motion to deny the plat was approved 7-0. Did I get that right?
Yes.
As soon as I said it, I knew that I did not say it right. Okay, council, now we have a number of items. Item number 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 They're all to incorporate various regulations into the town, to adopt them into the town ordinances. So since they are very similar in nature, I am going to open up for public comments on all these items at one time. Then once the public comments are received, we will invite staff to present each of the agenda items one at a time, and we take a motion. Sounds good? With that,
Mayor,
yes, yes,
could
sir.
I make a suggestion that might make this possibly easier, particularly if there's people that are calling in? Yeah,
I
take
don't
them.
believe that the meeting is a Zoom meeting tonight. Oh, because it wasn't, I didn't see the posting.
Okay, it is Zoom.
So if we're gonna do this all as one swap, if we have multiple people calling in and somebody wants to talk about 11, somebody wants to talk about one, I think it gets confusing for us to be able to respond. I think go down the list. Anybody have an issue with number one? Anybody have an issue with number two?
Are there anyone on the call tonight?
But there's nobody online.
Okay,
That'd be okay?
I was giving the town the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, does anyone from the members of the audience like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, or 18? You may come forward. If you're joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. There's no one coming forward from the chamber. Eric, anyone raising their hand?
No, sir.
No hands raised, so I'm going to close the public comments on these items. Now I am going to start with item number 8, for a public hearing on ordinance 20 first reading of 2022-14. I'm going to invite, I think that's Chief, am I right? Fire regulation, that be,
No, actually, I'll be doing it, Mayor.
okay, thank you. Yeah,
So actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read the presentation for you. And then I guess when you go down items, I'll just present each item to you for y'all to vote.
yes, sir.
So thank you, sir. So Mayor and Council, every 3 years, the National Building Codes are reviewed and amended. We adopted the current 2018 building codes upon my arrival as the building official in 2018. Today, the 2021 building codes are being presented to you for approval, along with the amendments provided by the North Texas Council of Governments, with one major change in the requirements to the building and fire code. That requirement is that all commercial buildings be required to be fire protected by providing a fire sprinkler system in all new commercial and any renovated commercial building that meet the minimum requirements within the adopted code. So staff recommends approval of all of these ordinances, and we're also available for any questions that you may have.
I have one question. What is the limit of the square footage for sprinkler?
So right now, under the current code, the limit is 6,000 square feet for new commercial buildings.
For the 2021 or the
No,
2018?
for the current codes now, 2018. Under the 2021, it depends on if we adopt option A or B, which typically we would probably be under option B, which would still be the 6,000 threshold. What we're recommending that all new commercial buildings be sprinkled. And we did a little research with some of the developers out there, and most of the developers that I discussed that with, they seem to be on board with it. They accept it because most municipalities are already doing it.
So this is for the new commercial building.
Yes, new commercial, also for any renovated building, but the renovated building would be depending on the square footage that they're wanting to either add or renovate. And so it's listed in the ordinance that we presented to you tonight.
Just one question for you. Somebody wanted a business, they went out of, cease for some time, they came back. If they had installed a sprinkler system, that's going to cost them a ton of money, right? Is that the intent?
Well,
I understand new business. I'm talking about renovation or.
yeah, so renovations, if you look in the ordinance, it's kind of based off if there's damage more than 50% to the building, then we would basically recommend in the ordinance, we'd recommend that they have to fire sprinkle the whole building at that time. If they're going to add to an existing building that puts them over a 5,000 square foot threshold, then we're going to require them to fire sprinkle the addition, not the whole building, but just the addition that they're adding to commercial building. But for new commercial, yes, it's going to be, you're required to sprinkle that building no matter what size it is.
We always get questions about not the new building, but new development, but somebody renovated building, right? Are there any option to waive that when that happens, or it's only one way?
Well, no, when you
The reason I said it, I just want to make sure that, right, we have,
Sometimes there are mitigating circumstances in the construction industry, and so in some cases, the fire official can look at certain things and certain avenues and possibly make a decisive decision on that, but that would be something where staff would have to collaborate.
Yes, and so the fire code allows the fire marshal to make decisions about alternative methods for providing for the same level of fire protection. That is solely within the fire marshal's discretion to make those determinations, and I don't believe that those would come to council. But yes, if someone says instead of sprinkling, we'll put in 5-hour, rated walls or whatever, then the fire marshal can make that determination under the fire code as it's proposed.
council, Mr. Finch.
So Doug, thank you, one, just to clarify on this, on the remodel specific, new construction, no problem. On like a remodel, as it currently sits, if they remodel a building it's over 6,000 square feet by more than 50%, they would be required to put in a sprinkler system. Is that right? That is correct. And so what we're saying is, if we pass this ordinance, if you remodel anything, no matter regardless of square footage, and it's 50%, let's say 51%, we're saying that you would have to put a sprinkler system in. Just trying to think about the number of buildings. like-
Yeah,
But you also got to look back on the 50% in the ordinance, it talks about structural damage. So if the structural damage is more than 50%, then we're going to require them to put a fire sprinkler system in the whole building. If it's less than 50%, then they're going to be able to remodel it and bring it back to basic standard without the fire sprinkler system, because it'd be considered legal non-conforming.
You need structural damage. That means if I go in with a sledgehammer.
Yes. Basically,
Trying
yes.
to clarify, it was not something else.
Yeah, so structural damage would mean in a case like that, as the authority having jurisdiction, we would require structural engineers to go in and make an assessment of the building. And if they assess that it's more than 50% damage, which basically in most cases, a lot of times they're just going to demo the whole thing and rebuild new anyways.
So if you were to just take a guess in town, like how many commercial structures would we have that would meet that requirement if somebody came in and bought it and wanted to remodel it? More than 50%.
So it's a very valid question. I'd have to go back and do a lot of research.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, all of a sudden we're going to put a burden, and I'm not saying it's not justified. I'm just wondering because there is an impact to
Yes.
do this, right? And so, when you look at the totality of risk, does this justify the totality of risk and then the cost back to somebody wanting to do it? So we pass these pretty quickly, and so I just
Right.
want to make sure we.
are we required to adopt this? I'm just asking the question.
No, sir.
So, council, what if I say this one, right? This is the first reading. Maybe Doug can go back and do some evaluation, give us some feedback before the second reading of this item.
Yes, and one other question I'd have, Doug, is I'm curious about the number of towns that adopt the all buildings as well. Sure. Are we in alignment? Are we a one-off? I know it's more work, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We serve at your.
Yeah.
No, I know.
But right? So somebody had an old building unoccupied and they want to go knock down the walls and add 3 more officers and maybe add a kitchen or something, all of a sudden you're above the limits. Now if you had to put a whole sprinkler system, that is.
Right, and that's where in the ordinance, it kind of varies in that. So that's where we give them the 50% threshold on the structural damage. But then we also.
So say that one more time. So the renovation means,
Well,
what's the definite renovation? Let me-
so
maybe-
renovation can be many things. So if you have structural damage, you're going to have to renovate the building at some
Got
point. That's simple and direct forward. But let's say they want to renovate their building and bring it up to current standards, or they want to renovate it to make their building look a lot better. So
Okay.
now they're going to go in and do a renovation. If they're doing a basic renovation to the building, we're not going to require the fire sprinkler. It more or less goes to renovating or what we call an addition to the building. If they're going to add more square footage, like you had just mentioned, they're going to add a kitchen and a couple of more offices and stuff. What we're going to require at this time through the ordinance is that particular addition will be the one that will be required to be fire sprinkled, not the whole building.
And again, just to
Eric,
clarify.
sorry. I mean, the only thing that I wanted to throw in is, I mean, given the cost of what things are actually costing these days, keep in mind, I did preliminary lookup on what this would cost. So keep in mind, if I'm way off, let me know. New constructions, it's like $2 a square foot or something. It's not much. It does come in, become more pricey once you actually start kind of trying to retrofit or put it onto an existing house. But it's still like $5 a foot. And I mean, if you're
Yeah.
looking at it's 5 to 7 is what I saw. I mean, I could be way off. Like I said, I Googled it before the
Yeah,
meeting.
no,
so
and I
it's-
totally understand. I was just gonna kind of go back. You mentioned house, so we're talking commercial right here.
Yeah.
Residential is basic 5,000 square foot in our.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So, but yeah, so, I mean, I think with where construction costs are these days, if someone's going to have to do a 50% reconstruction because of structural damage, that extra $5 a foot, $7 a foot isn't going to be the end of the world either way. It's going to cost them a pretty good amount of money to do it either way. And if that's a cost to rebuild the building, it's a cost to rebuild the building.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, yeah, I absolutely see the point. But and again, if my numbers are way off, then, if it's
you-
$20 a foot, it's a different story. But if,
Seem to be pretty close.
at 5 to 7 a foot for, what we're looking at, I don't know. To me, it's just a cost of putting in, basically rebuilding a building.
That we definitely I want to support doing the right thing, right? But I just also want to be sensitive to those who try to renovate a building to add something. And we just get them out of the business. That's really what I'm trying to, I'm trying to draw the fine line. I'm not
Totally understand.
Yeah, yes, sir. Chief, good evening.
If I can dovetail from
Yes, sir.
the 50% of a rebuild is already in our codes. So it's already there. Anything over 50%, it has to be added on or rebuilt. That's already in our codes. And 50%, now you're talking about commercial, correct? If it's over 50% in the current code is 6,000, and they add more to the renovations, then yes, it'd be the whole building gets sprinkled.
Right.
Okay. So as he also alluded to, we have had some, because y'all are asking for maybe some examples. We have had some examples where we do look at, as the city attorney mentioned, we do look at some alternatives to the buildings if they add to an existing building, so forth and so on. There's gaps in building construction that we can allow between buildings. There's firewalls and some that we can also allude to, at least protecting this building for the firewall that's existing. But if they're adding on quite a bit more to the building, then we spruce it up enough and include the sprinkler system.
Chief, let me ask you, I know when an applicant comes in, I know we streamline the process. I know the building officials and chief, you also, I forgot the design review or something, what do you call that? Design, what's that? DRC, Development Review Committee. When they come, is that an option we recommended them, or we it's up to them to go figure that out? The option B you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, when we have these issues that are challenges, we do get together with the building official, and we do come up, because we meet with these people, obviously, when they bring their plans into us, and we give them these options. And so far it has been successful for us to be able to work with these people. It's understandable.
So we do tell them that the options are available for. So
Yeah,
Doug,
and we
if you
do
can do
that.
some
and-
research, please.
Yes, sir, and that's what he was alluding to. When we do our development review committee meetings, we bring all of our development together, fire, engineering, building, planning. So we sit down and we talk with the applicant and we explain to them the different situations. We give them the different opportunities of which way they might want to go, and we make suggestions to them as far as what they can do with the code, what they can't do with the code. So they have all of their options laid out on the table in that review committee meeting for them to make a viable decision as to which route they really want to go. That's what's cost prohibitive.
So residential 6,000 is,
Residential's 5,000.
that's air conditioned area or including garage or everything?
That's everything under roof. That included garage and porches.
Council additional discussions on Mr. Allen?
I had one question. I think I get confused between what y'all said a little bit, and that is if there's remodeling, you may recommend it, but they don't have to. But if there's 50% more damage, then you're going to require it to the new building.
So, yeah,
Or
so
to
what that
both.
means, if there's structural damage that evolves to 50% or more in that structural damage, that's going to be a trigger point that's going to require that whole building be fire sprinkled at that time. Because in essence, they're pretty much going to be remodeling the whole building anyways, because if you're more than 50%, you're not going to just repair just that portion of it. You're going to go ahead and repair the whole portion. In most cases, they may even allude to demoing the whole building and just rebuilding brand new anyways, which at that point is going to require.
So if I have a 6,000 square foot building, and I want to add 1,000 foot, I'm only going to have to
Sprinkle the 1,000.
sprinkle the 1,000 and not the whole thing. Okay,
That is correct.
Council additional question? I never expected this kind of questions on tonight, on this topic. I'm glad.
We knew it was coming.
I can see Rachel staring at me. I can see it. All right, council, other additional discussions? We already do the public comments. There are no other discussion. Can I have a motion to, with respect to item number 7, please? Motion 8. Thank you, sir. Motion made by Mr. Egan. Do you have a second? Motion made by Egan, second by Mr. Freeman to approve item number 8 as presented. Everyone heard the motion? The additional discussion.
I just want to clarify that that's with the staff's recommended B option.
Well, no, there wouldn't be a B option in this one. This one's with recommendation of all commercial buildings.
That's right. So it's the A option.
Right, so we don't actually have an option. We didn't choose the A or B. We just put in there that it's very specific.
Okay.
So what is B then?
So, and I guess I'll let fire chief kind of.
I just want to make sure we were.
You are
approving
correct. So
the
we have
staff's
different options, A
recommendation.
and option B, depending on the town or the city municipality and the type of buildings that they have. And so we are under the option B threshold because we don't have high rises per se.
So we
like
are
the city of
option B,
Dallas.
not A.
Currently, we have option B, but in this ordinance, we won't have any option. It's just automatically all commercial buildings, all new commercial buildings will be fired.
So that's the only option we have.
That's, it used to be by the COG amendments, and all cities now are pretty much taking COG amendments and including them, like the building official has done. He's just included it in the code changes of, it's not an option B or A anymore. COGs were designed for the benefit of the cities and their benefits of what service they can provide, like for fire. You know, do they put restrictions on high rise? Because, you know, for us, we don't have a ladder truck or something. So we had those options. But what we did is we just put those options in the ordinance as presented. So there's not an A or B anymore for us.
Thank
And all cities are doing that as well.
Thank you, Chief. So motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Freeman to approve number 8 as recommended by the staff. Everyone heard the motion? The additional discussions. So Doug, again, this is the first reading. I think that's recommendation approved, but please come back with the research. I'm going to ask Rachel to keep this as a discussion topic, not a consent agenda on this one item, okay? Yes, sir.
Right, so we'll, on next vote, we will have more information, hopefully, right?
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking it, not put as a consent, but as a
Right,
discussion.
further
This
discussion.
one. Okay, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0, motion approved. Moving on to item number 9, would that be Mr. Key?
Yeah, and so this one here, so I pretty much gave you the same presentation. So for all of these, it's going to be the same presentation that I mentioned to you. The difference between item 9 and item 8, item 9 is the International Building Code. What you just voted on was the International Fire Code. Now, with you stating that you want to make sure that that is a discussion item for next week, you probably will want this one to be a discussion item also because it correlates with the fire code. The building code and fire code kind of correlate together, have the same ordinances as far as commercial fire sprinklers.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Council, additional questions or discussions? There are none. I call for a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Mr. Eldridge to approve item number 9 as presented and approve what staff recommended. Everyone heard the motion? Any discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed. 7, moving to item number 10. Ordinance 2022-04.
So this one is for the residential building code, so nothing's really changed there. We still have the same standards. There are a few things that we took from the North Texas Council of Government that we added to this ordinance. There are some things that we did not. We wanted to make it ancillary to Sunnyvale only, so we wanted to make sure that we had the right codes in there for the residential.
So
really
there is no
nothing-
additional burden on residents because of this.
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Any questions or discussions on this topic?
I have a question. So it's still 5,000 square feet for residential?
That is correct, because that's under a 2009 ordinance that was in play. And in order for us to continue to have that in play, we have to continue with that ordinance as is, because based on legislation, we had that ordinance prior to legislation being passed for other municipalities not to require that.
Right. Okay. So what do other municipalities have for their residential homes? I know we have a lot of houses first year ago. Sprinkler systems. So just, you might not know this, but I'd love to maybe next time also do research on what other municipalities have around us.
Yeah, I can do that. We've done that in the past, and we can provide that information.
Kevin, to your point, maybe you should put a YouTube video together to show people how to drain those. So when their power goes out, it's freezing. So that doesn't happen.
People are sort of money. Okay. That was number 10, right, Mr. Key?
Yes, sir.
Okay, council. Are there additional discussions or comments on this one? If none, I call for a motion on 10. Motion made by Mr. Egan to, what's that? Okay. Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve ordinance 2022-04 as presented by staff. Second by Mr. Eldridge. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Okay, all opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Kevin, don't mess with me. He's fixing his hair at this time. I call for a motion. Item number 11. Ordinance. I thank you very much, Council. Item number 12, ordinance 2022-06. Mr. Key.
Yeah, so this one here is for the property maintenance code. And so what that is for existing properties and stuff. And so what that is ancillary to is more of our code enforcement. So that allows us to regulate property maintenance as far as making sure that they're maintaining the property accordingly. They've got running water, operating toilets, electricity, various things like that. They don't have weathering material on the exterior of the building. They're making sure that they're maintaining the building, painting it, taking care of it.
So no extra burden.
No extra burden. In the property maintenance code, it does address weeds, but our ordinance that we have currently is more restrictive. Yes.
Okay, additional questions for staff on 22, item number 12. If none, I call for a motion. Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve ordinance 2022-06 as recommended by staff. Second by Mr. Eldridge. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? There are none. All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 13. That's with respect to ordinance 2022-07.
Yeah, this one here is the mechanical code. There were no major changes in that one. It's just standard.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Council, you heard the comments. Any discussions? If none, I call for a motion on item number 13. Motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Mr. Freeman to approve ordinance 2022-07 as recommended by staff. Everyone heard the motion? The additional discussions. If not, all in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed. 7. Moving on to item number 14. That is ordinance 2022-08. Mr. Key.
So this one is for the 2021 adoption of the plumbing code. Again, there's no significant changes there.
Council, any questions, discussions?
I have a quick question. Does our code require water shut-offs at the house?
Yes, that is in the plumbing code.
That is a
The plumbing
recent,
code
that's a
says-
recent change from the last 10 years, isn't it?
That's probably, I would say more or less 15. or 20. But it depends on.
What
which
defines at the
municipality.
house?
Sir?
What defines the cutoff at the house?
Typically in the plumbing code, it says within 3 foot of the entrance to the structure.
Okay, thank you.
What's the code? What is the, can you explain that?
Well, what it is, it's a water cutoff that's available to the homeowner because homeowners are not allowed to go into the water meter itself unless you're a licensed plumber or you're water utility certified. And so what we require in the plumbing code is we require a water cutoff at the entrance to the existing structure. So typically it's within 3 foot of the existing structure. Times past, when I first came here in 2018, they were allowed to have those cutoffs out in the yard, 6 foot into the property. But we changed that because all of a sudden you had a water meter cutoff, you had a cutoff right there, and then you had a cutoff either at the house or inside the house. That delays the pressure of the water getting into the property. So we eliminated that. So the plumbing code does require a cutoff at the entrance.
So the two, one on the roadside.
So you have the water meter, and then you have the one at the entrance of the house. Yes, sir.
I will say this, my house was built in 78 and it wasn't built by an outstanding builder. It not only has the cutoff within 3 feet of the foundation of the entrance into the house, but it also has a second valve on the house side of that valve that you can open and drain the house. But as I recall, and I don't want to dispute what you're saying, Doug, as I recall, that went into the uniform plumbing code
Yes, sir.
back in about 83. It may have been a bit earlier than that. It's been around a long
Been
time.
around a long time. Yes, sir.
We were on 14, right, Mr. Key?
That is correct.
Okay, council, you heard the comments, explanation from staff, the additional discussions. Now, can I have a motion with respect to 14, please?
Second.
Motion made by Egan, second by Eldridge to approve 22-08 as recommended by staff. You heard the motion of the additional discussions. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 15, ordinance 2022-09. Key.
Yes, sir. So this one is for the International Energy Conservation Code with the amendments, and there's no major changes to that. They just recommended that we be energy efficient with the buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Council, any comments or questions? If none, I call for a motion, item number 15. Motion made by Mr. Egan. You have a second. Second by Mr. Freeman to approve ordinance 2022-09 as recommended by staff. You don't heard the motion. Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. And number 15 is passed. Moving on to item number 16, 2022-10.
This one is for the fuel gas code. Again, there's no major changes in that. It's just basically for all fuel gas.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Council, everyone heard the discussions. Are there any comments or questions?
Well, as I was sitting here, I actually had a thought. It might simplify if your motion is to approve ordinance 2022-10.
Okay.
And then 2022-11. And then 2022.
Okay. Do we have a motion for item number 16? Motion made by Mr. Egan to approve ordinance 2022-10. You have a second. Second by Mr. Eldridge. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 2017, 2022-11. Mr. Key.
Yes, this one is for the swimming pool and spa code. There's no major changes. In that.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Are there any questions or discussions? If not, can I have a motion with respect to 17, please?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Mr. Clark to approve ordinance 2022-11. Everyone heard the motion. Are there additional discussions? If not, all in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed. Motion 17, item number 17 passed. 18, ordinance 2022-12. Mr. Key,
Yes, sir. This one is for the National Electrical Code. So this is actually a code cycle behind the 2021. So it's the 2020 code under the National Electrical Code, but there's no major changes there.
thank you, Mr. Key. Anyone has any comments or discussions? If not, can I have a motion with respect to 18, please? Motion made by Mr. Egan, second by Mr. Eldridge to approve ordinance 2022-12. Everyone heard the motion? For the additional discussions. All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. We are through 18. Am I right, Mr. Key?
Yes, sir.
We are moving on to discussion action items. Item number 19, consider action on ordinance 2022-13. Ms. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, as you know, each year town council is required to order their general election. This year's election is going to be held on Saturday, May the 7th, with early voting being April 25th through May the 3rd. And as you all know, but just to repeat it for the record, a council member to be qualified has to receive more than 50% of the votes cast, and if not, there'll have to be a runoff election, which is scheduled to be held June the 18th. Yes, June the 18th, 2022. And if that has to happen, then we'll bring back the runoff ordinance to you. Staff anticipates that the contract with Dallas County should be ready by the end of March, and we'll bring that to you to approve. That money is budgeted in this year's fiscal budget.
Question for Linda, Brenda, or maybe Rachel. Since this is an ordinance, do we need a first and second reading or only one reading?
Our home rule charter only requires one reading on election ordinances only.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I'm going to open up for public comments. If there's anyone from the members of the audience who'd like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 19, you may do so. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Eric, anyone raising their hand?
No, sir.
No hands raised, so I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there any discussions or questions on item number 19? If none, I call for a motion, please. Motion made by Mr. Eldridge to approve ordinance 2022-13 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. Everyone heard the motion? For the additional discussions. All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 20. Consider action on first reading of ordinance 2022-16, repealing all ordinance adopting the town's investment policies. I think that is Mr. Hoff.
Yes, good evening again, Mayor and Council. This is a cleanup item as staff was preparing to bring the investment policy forward to council for your annual review of the policy. We realized that the policy was codified as part of the Code of Ordinances rather than being adopted by resolution. Typically, whenever council adopts a policy, it's adopted by resolution, not ordinance. And also, if you read the policy, it talks about being amended by resolution, which leads staff to believe it was never really intended to be adopted by ordinance, just was for some reason. And so what we're proposing is to, for you all to adopt this ordinance. It would repeal all of the ordinances that adopted the policy. That would remove it from the Code of Ordinances. And because it's an ordinance that requires 2 readings, if you approve it tonight, we'll bring it back at the next meeting, along with a resolution that adopts the policy the right way by resolution. And so there's no gap in the policy being effective. It's just whether or not it's by ordinance or by resolution. And we're not proposing any changes to the substance of the policy either.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goff. Let me open up for public comments. If there's anyone from the members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 20, you may do so. If you're joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Eric, anyone raise their hand?
No, sir.
Now hands raised. We're going to close the public comments. Council, are there any questions or discussions on item number 20? If none, I call for a motion, please.
Motion to approve item 20 as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman to approve ordinance 2206
Second.
dash 16 as presented. Okay, I just want to, that number is correct, right? Everything else is 2022, this one says 2202.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the year. So 2022-16.
That's no problem with that, right, Brenda?
That's no problem.
Okay, so I want to make that correction. Council, I'm sorry, who made the motion again? Who made this? Did anybody second it?
I don't have a
Okay, so Mr. Freeman, Mr. Egan, you're good with the change in the ordinance number?
I just stated item number 20.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to make the correction, right? Motion made by Mr. Freeman, second by Egan to approve ordinance 2022-16. As presented. Everyone heard the motion? Other additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed. Moving to item number 11, Chief, you're going to come forward, sir. Consider action to accept the Sunnyvale Police Department's 2021 racial profiling report. Good evening, Chief. Thanks, sir.
I just have the mayor is the Sunnyvale Police Department's 2021 racial profiling report. In 2001, the Texas legislature required law enforcement agencies that conduct traffic stops to track their data on traffic stops and report it to Texas Commission on Law Enforcement and their local governing body. So that's what we're doing tonight. That packet is also in your agenda packet if you'd like to look through it. It's a lengthy report. It's about 80 pages. I'm going to just summarize it for you. The last 2 years, Sunnyvale's is retained Dr. Alex Del Carmen, who's an expert in statistical analysis and racial profiling in law enforcement in Texas. He's also the dean of criminal justice at Tarleton. And his findings in his report after analyzing our data is the following requirements were met by the Sunnyvale Police Department in accordance with the Texas racial profiling law. Sunnyvale PD's implemented a racial profiling policy citing act or actions that constitute racial profiling. Include in the racial profiling policy a statement indicating prohibition of any peace officer employed by the Sunnyvale PD from engaging in racial profiling. Implement a process by which an individual may file a complaint regarding racial profiling violations. Provide public education related to the complement and complaint process. Implement disciplinary guidelines for officers found in violation of the Texas racial profiling law. Collect, report, and analyze motor vehicle data. Commission data audits and a search analysis. Indicate total number of officers who knew and did not know the race, ethnicity of individuals being detained. Produce an annual report on police contacts and present this to the local governing body and TCO by March 1st, 2022. And adopt a policy if video and audio equipment is installed on standards for reviewing video and audio documentation. The search analysis, the comprehensive analysis of the data included in this report demonstrates that the Sunnyvale Police Department has complied with the Texas racial profiling law and all of its requirements. Further, the report demonstrates that the police department has incorporated a comprehensive racial profiling policy, currently offers information to the public on how to file a complement and complaint, commissions quarterly data audits in order to ensure validity and reliability, collects and commissions the analysis of tier 2 data, and ensures that the practice of racial profiling will not be tolerated. The search analysis demonstrates that the police department is engaging in search practices consistent with national trends in law enforcement. And that we reported no instances where force was used that resulted in bodily injury on a traffic stop. And that's basically in a nutshell. There's lots of numbers and stuff like that. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Council, I'm going to take your comments first, then I'll open the public comments that your chief can go. sit down after that. Council, any question for chief? Thank you, chief. Appreciate you. Now open up for public comments. If there's anyone from the members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 20, item number 21, you may do so. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Erica, anyone raising their hand?
No, sir.
No hands raised. We're going to close the public comments. Council, are there additional questions or discussions on item number 21? If none, I call for a motion on item number 21.
Motion approved.
Motion made by Mr. Early,
It's a motion to accept.
Oh, sorry. Motion to accept.
Second.
motion made by Mr. Early and second by Mr. Clark to item number 21 to accept the Sunnyvale Police Department's 2021 racial profiling report. Everyone heard the motion. Other additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7. Now moving on to the item number 22. Mayor Council request for future staff updates and agenda items. Council. Okay, if there are none, I call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Motion made by Early, second by Mr.
Second.
Second by Mr. Clark to adjourn. All in favor? Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Time is 7:57. Meeting is adjourned. You'll have a happy